In 1969, the world watched as humanity took its first steps on the moon. Or did we? The Apollo 11 mission, hailed as one of mankind's greatest achievements, has been clouded by doubt for decades. Questions persist. Was it truly a historic milestone, or is it a story constructed in the shadows of a global conspiracy? Tonight, we explore the shocking possibility that the moon landing was not the triumph we were told, but a staged event designed to fool the world. Welcome to Bellows From Beyond. On July 20th, 1969, Apollo 11's lunar module, Eagle, touched down on the surface of the moon. Neil Armstrong, stepping out in his bulky suit, declared, "That's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind." Millions of people around the globe watched in awe as Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin became the first humans to walk on the moon, first humans to set foot on the moon. But what if that iconic moment was nothing more than a carefully crafted illusion? In the years since, numerous experts have questioned the authenticity of the moon landing. The technology of the 1960s was not advanced enough to support such a monumental feat, many argue. How could a country, racing against the Soviet Union, suddenly land on the moon with what seems like a lack of preparation and technological support? Was the space race just another stage for a much larger geopolitical show? One of the most striking pieces of evidence cited by conspiracy theorists is the American flag planted on the moon's surface. When the astronauts are seen on film, the flag appears to be rippling, despite there being no wind on the moon. If there is no atmosphere, how could the flag wave? Then there's the lighting. In the footage, the astronauts cast shadows in multiple directions, but there was only one light source, the sun. This inconsistency has led many to believe that the footage was shot in a studio, where multiple light sources could create such anomalies. And let's not forget the photographs. The clarity and detail of the photos taken on the moon's surface seem almost too perfect, with colors and contrasts that defy the harsh conditions of space. Many have asked, could these images have been doctored on Earth in the safety of a studio? Another striking piece of evidence revolves around the moon rocks that were supposedly brought back to Earth. NASA claimed to have collected 47 pounds of lunar rocks during the Apollo missions. Yet, despite their scientific significance, many of these rocks have mysteriously vanished, or their authenticity has been called into question. In the 1970s, one of these moon rocks ended up being a hoax in a museum in the Netherlands. Could this be a mistake, or was it part of a larger cover-up? Other researchers argue that the so-called moon rocks were actually pieces of terrestrial rocks, altered to look like samples from another world. If the mission was a hoax, were these rocks simply another piece of the puzzle? At the height of the Cold War, the United States and the Soviet Union were locked in a battle for global dominance. The space race was one of the most visible arenas for this competition. As tensions mounted, America was desperate to assert its technological supremacy. The moon landing, with all its media coverage and political significance, was the perfect stage for the U.S. to win the Cold War. But what if the landing was just a strategic play, a way to claim victory without ever leaving Earth's atmosphere? In this chapter, we examine the political climate surrounding the moon landing. The U.S. was under immense pressure to be the first to the moon, but was the cost too great? Could the government have faked the mission to gain an advantage in the space race and to end the war on their terms? What about the men who are said to have gone to the moon? Neil Armstrong, Buzz Aldrin, Michael Collins, their names are etched into the history books, forever associated with the Apollo 11 mission. But some believe that these astronauts were not pioneers of space, but rather actors in an elaborate production. Over the years, Armstrong, Aldrin, and Collins have been quiet about the growing conspiracy theories. In interviews, they've offered little in the way of solid evidence to quell the doubts surrounding the mission. Was this silence a sign of complicity, or was it a result of a more sinister pressure? There have been whispers that the astronauts were told to remain silent, under the threat of never working in the space industry again, or even more dangerous consequences. Were they simply pawns in a greater game, or did they know something we were never meant to know? Despite all the evidence that suggests a hoax, there are still many who believe in the official story. Some point to the technological advances made during the Apollo missions and the achievements that followed as proof that mankind did, in fact, land on the moon. Others argue that the sheer number of people involved in the Apollo program makes it unlikely that such a massive conspiracy could remain hidden. However, there are still questions that have never been fully answered. Why, for example, has no one returned to the moon since Apollo 17 in 1972? Why haven't we established a permanent base on the lunar surface, despite the advances in technology? These questions continue to haunt the legacy of Apollo 11 and raise doubts that will never be fully answered. If you've been drawn into the mystery of the moon landing and the lies that may have surrounded it, be sure to like, subscribe, and join us for more stories where history and deception collide into the beyond.